A discussion of the North Pond Hermit, next on Interlocution. The North Pond Hermit was a legend a little bit like Bigfoot. In 1986, Christopher Knight walked away from it all to live in the woods of North Maine. For 27 years, he made it through a clever combination of roughing it and stealing from local cabins and campsites. But Christopher Knight, the North Pond Hermit's life as a hermit came to an end in 2013 when he tripped some sensors at Pine Tree Camp and was captured by local law enforcement agents. Again, it was a bit like catching a legend, like Bigfoot or something like that, to these locals who knew that there was someone out there, they just didn't know who. So now the community and the district attorney had to decide what to do with the man, the myth, the legend, the North Pond Hermit, now that he was caught. Here to help us discuss this issue, this very interesting situation, are two of my Parkland College students, and I'll let them introduce themselves to you.
My name is Steven Rutledge. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and my major is childhood education.
Good. My name is Levi Collins. My major is criminal justice. I'm from Chicago, Illinois.
So, gentlemen, the North Pond Hermit disappears for 27 years into the woods of Maine. We know that, but what are some of the other things people need to know to understand about the North Pond Hermit?
That he stole from people who lived in North Pine.
Yeah, and when you say that, what are some of the things you remember from studying this person that he stole?
That he showed to live that way. He left home at 19, stealing from local residents on a regular, at least 2 times. He had to find stuff to survive. He didn't have no money. He didn't want to go ask for no help, so he found another route to do it by going to go steal. Good
point. In fact, if I remember correctly, what's the one thing that he had that was his own?
His glasses.
His glasses.
Yeah, he's got his glasses. So what does that tell you?
Everything else is stolen.
Yeah, and some folks may not have ever seen his campsite. Can we describe it to them? What did his campsite look like?
He had propane tanks, clothes, a line of clothes, tools, coolers.
Yeah, yeah, he had a tent,
with
the big tarp over it, you know, to keep warm, sleeping bags, all of that, right?
Stolen.
All that stolen. Yeah, that's true. Why did he have to steal all that stuff?
To survive.
Survive.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the woods in Maine, and remember we took a look geographically. I mean, Maine is way up there, way north of New York City, you know, it's just way deep snow. What are some of the things that he would have had to encounter living by himself in those woods?
Animals.
Bears, wolves, coyotes, all types of big animals out there.
Yeah, and you guys are big city guys. So what do you think about that?
I wouldn't live there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't choose to go there.
So we know he stole, and we know he stole a lot of stuff. And maybe we'll talk a little more about that later. What were some of the other challenges of living by himself in the woods all that time?
No one to talk to. No one to run to when something's wrong.
That's a good point. Yeah, something goes wrong, what does he do?
Nothing. He can't do nothing but take care of his own.
Yeah.
Living in the woods, I don't know what to say about that.
Well, now think about your generation, okay? And both of you guys, how old are you guys now?
I'm 19.
19?
26.
26. Okay, got a little span there, okay? Think about your generation. Do you think an average person from your generation could make it 6 months in the woods with no contact with anybody? Why not?
Because our generation now revolves all around cell phones.
The average person can't go a day without a phone, and he went numerous of days without a phone.
Yeah. Well, explain that a little bit. What does the cell phone mean to your generation?
Everything.
Everything.
Well,
tell me about a day without that. I can't go a day. I really can't miss a phone call, a text message. I can't miss a blog, and I can't miss an update on sports. I
Social
can't miss
networks,
nothing.
everything.
Now, how many times a day would you say you check your cell phone?
In 24 hours?
Yeah, like
in 24 hours.
5, 6 times
about a million
hour.
times a day.
Within an hour, yeah, like 5 or 6 times for me.
Okay. Now, your girlfriend's coming down to visit you, right? So what, will you get some texts for how did you guys arrange for all this using the cell phone?
Yeah, we was texting.
She's not texting you now, is she?
No.
No.
So your generation checking cell phones 5, 6 hours a day. What about these social networks you guys are always on?
Mine don't never logs off.
Yeah.
Never
I check
logs
those every
off.
day, too.
So a lot of your relationships are...
Come right to my phone.
Okay.
Everything goes to my phone. School, assignment, grades.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's amazing, because we have to imagine this guy not just alone for a day or a week or a month, but a year slips by. In fact, someone wrote, you know how people wrote some songs about him. We studied those.
Mm-hmm.
One guy wrote a song about him, and he said, where'd that go here? He said, you and I will never know what the North Pond Hermit knows, what it's like to be alone, and a decade comes and goes.
I would never know what that's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really different than how we live our lives, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about today. I can't think about a decade, so I can't.
How about your generation for entertainment? What does your generation do when you want some entertainment?
Television.
Video
TV.
games,
Mm-hmm.
driving around, talking to girls. We're boys. We talk to girls.
Yeah, and I can't live without my video game.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll stay in the woods.
You can live without the girls, huh, but not without the video game.
No, I can live without the girls either.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, when we were discussing this with someone else in the college a few minutes ago, and she said, no women, you know, for this guy, and she was kind of surprised by that. What do you make of that? I mean, this guy's alone. There are no women here. You know, that would be a bit of a challenge, eh?
Mm-hmm.
That's 27 years without a woman. I can't see that.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he do it? Why did he walk away?
I guess to get away from society.
Low self-esteem. Probably was the child that wasn't. I don't know if he had brothers or sisters or not. I don't know what his life was like at home. I don't know about his mom, dad. That he probably was the one kid who probably was mistreated out of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is the one thing we do know about his mom?
She didn't send a report out.
Right.
What was missing?
Yeah, she disappears, right, and doesn't send the missing persons report. I mean, we don't know why, but can you make some guesses why that might be?
I have no. I don't.
Maybe they had a discrepancy at home or something. I don't know. Maybe she didn't really care for him, I guess.
Yeah, it's really hard to figure out.
It kind of, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, most parents would report their kids missing. But he didn't tell nobody, so nobody really never know why.
That's right, yeah. I mean, he himself doesn't really even know, right? Like you said. And so we've already kind of got around this a bit, but some people really, really admire this guy. He's a hero to them. And we've discussed it a bit, but why do some people admire him?
It was a source of hope. Jessica Reed said it was a source of hope to her. It's hard for somebody to, I don't know about the 87, what they had back in 86, but 2013, just drop everything I have right now and just move into the woods. I couldn't be able to do that.
That's
and
a good
to live
point.
consistently through it, he didn't run back. He didn't run back to trying to live in the home. He didn't want to. He wanted to stay in the woods.
So some of the heroic things are the fact that he didn't just run back when it got hard. Now, you mentioned that quote, source of hope, and I also picked up on that too. It was her name was Reed, the reporter who said that...
Jessica Reed?
Jessica Reed, thank you. Yeah, she gave, guys like Christopher Knight give her a source of hope. Again, wow, what does she and other people like her find so hopeful about a guy like Christopher Knight?
Living in the woods for 27 years and surviving.
Maybe
Alive.
she feel like she could do it too.
You wouldn't, by looking at him, you wouldn't believe he lived in the woods for 27 years. You thought he was living at home.
That's true. When you see pictures of him, he doesn't have a beard down to here, does
He
he?
didn't
Clean
look like a
face.
moonshiner.
Yeah. Yeah. Now he's looking good. Now, you mentioned, LeByron, you mentioned that maybe she would think that she could do it too. What do you mean by that?
Maybe if she feel like since the Hermit main man did it for 27 years, maybe she feel like since he broke the water, he could do it. She could do it too. It's maybe not that hard to her.
Good point. I was also thinking when I thought about this that maybe some of the hope is that, you know, if he could sort of break out and do his own thing to that extreme. Now maybe I'm not going to go to the woods, but maybe I can start that exercise program I've been meaning to, you know. maybe I can make changes, you know. And by the way, when you're 44 like me, you start thinking this way about different changes that you want to make. So maybe that's part of the source of hope is if he can do that kind of thing, maybe I can do this sort of thing too. How about you guys or other guys in the class who studied this this gentleman? What did you guys find? Did you find anything admirable about him yourselves?
Yeah,
don't never give up. Anything is possible. Whatever you want to do, you can do. It's your choice. It's your world. And he proved that by living in the woods for 27 years. He didn't care.
Good point. Yeah. If he can do that, yeah, that's a good point. How about you, LeBaron? Anything that you personally found admirable about him?
I mean, I think he's really smart, actually. If he could really make his own food in the woods by himself without any real stove or lights or anything, I think that's real kind of smart.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you can tell when you look at his campsite that this isn't a dummy. You know, this isn't the crazy guy. I mean, that thing is set up. It's camouflaged. It actually, as I found out later, was only about a mile away from a used highway. So he really had to hide that place pretty good to stay by himself for 27 years, you know. So yeah,
a lot of working on it.
Yeah, there are definitely admirable aspects to it. But as we're going to transition into, not everybody finds him very admirable, do they? No, not everybody does, because in fact, where did most of his food come from?
People's homes, Pine Tree Camp.
Yeah, people's homes, Pine Tree Camp.
He didn't buy none of it.
Yeah, none of it. Again, just his glasses. And when you see the picture of him, he still has those glasses after 27 years. So when we come back from our break, we're going to discuss why people maybe don't find the Maine Hermit so admirable, and then we'll discuss what we think we should do with a guy like Christopher Knight, the North Pond Hermit, when we come back. Stealing from camps, nearby cabins. Many people, as we discussed in the first half, found this guy admirable, heroic, as you quoted, a source of hope. But not everybody felt that way. Some people, well, I'll let you guys tell us. What is it the people who don't like him think about the North Pond Hermit?
That he's a thief and that he should pay the fiddler after being caught for 27 years. That's what David Pollock said.
Yeah, he needs to pay the fiddler. What does he mean by that?
He got away with over 1,000 burglaries. Eventually gets caught.
Yeah, you pay the crime, you do time.
Yep. Yes.
Some people don't want him to go to jail, but then again, he stole from some people who do want him to go to jail, so they say you need to pay. You got to pay up.
What are some examples you remember about the kinds of crimes that he committed? You're right. As you mentioned, he committed over 1,000 crimes during that 27 years. What are some of the things you remember that he did?
He even visited some of the place more than once.
Yeah. In fact, I have a quote here. David Praux, since 1990, Christopher Knight would visit his place twice a year. So that adds up to 46 times. He stole. In fact, I found a little quote from David Praux where he said that eventually he would leave a note on the door saying, he left a note on the door saying, "What is it that you want? Just don't break the door." You know? Well, what are some other things you remember that he did, he stole?
Somebody, I don't remember who the family was, but somebody said he took some boat keys.
Right.
Batteries.
Boat keys, batteries. What other kind of pictures did you see? What's that?
Flashlights. Yep. But nothing is a flash. It's not like he took a flat screen TV or your wallet, your cell phone. He didn't take nothing that really was pricey.
Yeah.
Nothing that had a price on it.
That's a good point.
Food.
Yeah, and why do you find that significant, that he wasn't walking out with flat screens or, you know,
He didn't want it.
people's wallets, cell phones? Why do you find that significant?
He didn't want it. He'd rather probably take a book to read. But at TV, he really didn't feed into the world. I think he didn't feel like he fed into the world. He didn't fit in. He didn't care about it.
Now, you wrote in your paper, LeByron, about, and several people had little stories they told in their paper about times where they were either stolen from themselves or family members stolen from. Now, you had a little story that you told about your aunt. Do you mind telling that story again?
Yeah. There was one incident, something happened, but it was a burglary in my aunt's house. She called my mom crying and stuff. But long story short, he took a lot of, tried to take TV, of course. He took radios, some jewelry, but he took a blender. Well, whoever it was took the blender. And at least 2 to 3 months later, it happened again. Somebody hit her house again, and they took, mostly it's like clothes now, and they took my cousin's video game, but they took the blender again. So I don't know what was up with that.
Why did they take the blender twice?
I don't know, maybe they needed it.
They make it slushy.
One person also said when she went to see if she could find some of her old stuff, she said, I came to reclaim 27 years of peace of mind. That kind of connects to your aunt, doesn't it? Yeah, it's not just the stuff he stole, but what else does he steal also at the same time?
Safe. People wasn't feeling safe at home. I mean, even though he really wasn't threatening nobody, they just didn't feel safe by not knowing who's stealing from them, consistently breaking into their home.
That's a good point. So, I don't know, what do you guys think about that? That feeling of unsafety he left people with.
Stealing ain't good, but
How was the feeling?
stealing is never good. But his type of stealing is not the normal type of stealing. It's stealing when you're stealing something that has a value behind it, or somebody's heirloom, or you inherited it or something. If it's not that, then if it's not something that you know you can put on eBay and make a couple of thousand from, you shouldn't complain about it. I mean, you shouldn't be able to report stolen groceries.
Although that is food, though. Everybody need their food.
Police
That's a good point. I mean, one person in their paper wrote that, you know, even if, like, for example, Pine Tree Camp, if you remember that, I think his name is Harvey Chelsea, he said basically, I love this quote, the manager of Pine Tree Camp said he used us like his local Walmart. And he tells a story about one day he bought food for 30 people. Now, how much do you suppose that's going to cost?
A lot of money.
It's going to cost a little bit of money. Well, he buys food for 30 campers who are coming. And by the way, the camp, what's significant about this camp? You remember?
It's a disability camp.
Yeah, I got to give a little side note on that. Pine Tree Camp is a disabilities camp. How does it make you feel towards him that he stole from the disabilities camp?
He's weak.
Why do you say that?
He took a cowaway out. He stole from people who already can't manage for themselves. They disabled. But food, I mean, probably the ones that if he came into there, they probably would have accepted him. But it just, I think he had a self-esteem problem. He didn't have a way of opening up to people and talking to them.
That's a good point. He could have alternatively come and said, hey.
They probably would have let him in.
Yeah, maybe
warm on.
Instead of just sneaking in at 4 o'clock in the morning tonight, trying to steal food. What is the beef patties and hot dogs and stuff they said he was taking?
Yeah.
He could have probably just asked the next morning, and can I sit down and have a feast with, you know what I'm saying, lunch with the kids or whatever?
That's a good point. Yeah, there's always alternatives, and he didn't do it. In fact, what he was asked at one point, why didn't you fish or hunt? And his response was, it's too hard. So, yeah, there's always an alternative.
He took the easy ways out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That reminds me of the Parkland Reed's book that we're studying now, which hopefully we'll get to do a show on the other Westmore. We were talking about that today, how he went into a life of crime, one of the Westmores. He had a tremendous amount of pressure on him, but at the same time, maybe there could have been another thing he could have done, you know, besides a life of crime. Okay, so how do you feel about this guy? We talked about some admirable things about him, But now, you know, we're talking about that's pretty weak to steal from a disabilities camp. So kind of where do you feel? Where does he settle into you?
I feel he's wrong, but I don't feel like he's a threat.
I think he's a criminal.
I don't feel like he's a menace to society. I don't feel like he's going to harm anyone.
So not a menace to society, but you flat out say, LeBaron, he's a criminal. Now define that. What is a criminal to you?
Someone, of course, who breaks the law.
Break the law.
He breaks laws. By breaking laws, you have to, you know what I'm saying, you break the law, you steal.
He's not a real criminal.
How come you not?
Well, that's an interesting point. So criminal, but to you, he's not a real criminal. So define what not a real criminal means.
A real criminal is somebody who intent harm or going into a bank and holding somebody hostage or kidnapping or it's some type of violence behind
So
it.
he's not a real criminal? You don't think he's a real criminal?
He's a food criminal. A survival criminal, a criminal that stole sleeping bags, batteries, propane tanks, tarps, simple stuff that you can simply go buy again, but he didn't go clear out your bank account by robbing the bank.
So interesting point. So what do you think about that? Because he didn't intend harm, as Duran's saying, that, or at least big harm, like clearing out your bank account, something like that. That doesn't make him a real criminal. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I kind of agree with him, but at the same time, he still broke a law. He still stole from innocent children and people that needed food from families, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, say you bought a whole bunch of food for your kids.
Somebody stealing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna
How
want
would you
justice
feel?
to be served, but I wouldn't want him to serve 50 years in jail. I mean, that's for that face. That's for 50 years in jail or 27 years. That's for people who did a murder, attempted armed robbery, not robbery, not theft, armed theft. If it's an armament, if it's a threat behind it, I mean, now if he doing it when nobody's around. He finally got caught in Pine Tree Camp.
Right.
Somebody's around, but every other time nobody's around. Nobody know who he is.
That's a good point. So he's doing this when no one's around.
He's not harming nobody. He's not trying to be seen. He don't want to see nobody.
Interesting point. Now, I mentioned this to you guys in break, and I've got to say one of my other students is the one who made this connection. I didn't come up with it, but in the news was a guy named Troy T. Knapp, who, like the main man, lived in the mountains for about 6 years. But this guy, Troy T. Knapp, when he would break into people's places, he would sleep there. Sometimes he would shoot up the place with his many guns that he stole. He'd drink their whiskey. He would, this is crazy, but he would deface religious icons. So if they had a little picture of Jesus, I suppose, he'd cut it up or that sort of thing. Do you see Troy T. Knapp as different than Christopher Knight?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Everything he's doing is defaming. It's slandering. It's
Vandalism.
degrading.
Let's just say he was more reckless than Christopher Knight.
That's the type of person I
He's a more
get 10
reckless
years.
person.
You say he only did it 6 years? Christopher Knight did it for 27 years living in the woods. 6 years of slandering and burning and shooting up people's houses, you'll get 10 years from me. 27 years of stealing groceries, I'll give you community service. I wouldn't even really worry about you. You're not a threat.
All right. Well, you already jumped into our last segment we're going to have after break, and that is I asked you guys, the class that studied this, to imagine that you're the district attorney who has to figure out how to charge, a guy like Christopher Knight. And when we come back after break, I'll ask our guests, and I myself will respond to that question. How do you charge the North Pond Hermit? Well, gentlemen, thanks for a great discussion. So when we studied Christopher Knight, I asked you guys to imagine that you were the district attorney in Kennebec County in North Maine. In this case, the real district attorney was named Megan Maloney, and she's quoted as saying, "The victims in this case have the same range as the public as a whole. So there are people who don't see any need for jail time, And there are people who think life imprisonment is appropriate. So, LeByron, let's start with you. You're the district attorney. How do you charge Christopher Knight? What kind of punishment would you seek for him?
He has to be in jail for at least more than 1 year, I think. At least more than 1 year. Maybe 3 to 5, 3 on good time, but he will have community service after to Pine Tree, the camp that he was stealing from. At least something he has to do around there to pay back his faults.
Tell us why. Why would you give him some solid time? Not too much, but some solid time.
Because he stole for 27 years, but he didn't physically harm anybody like a real killer or something a criminal would do. But it wasn't that harsh a crime, but it was for 27 years. But he doesn't deserve that much time, so because he really didn't hurt anybody physically or anything. But yeah, that's why.
Okay, thanks. 3 to 5 years and community service to Pine Tree Camp. Right. Nice. Okay, District Attorney Duran, how would you charge Christopher Knight, and what would be the punishment?
I would give him 27 years of community service in Rome, everywhere he's stolen from, and I want him to particularly work with the people that he's stolen from.
What would that look like? What would you have him doing for community service?
Maybe he'll start feeling them and then see what he did do to them, how he hurting him. But he would never know until he worked with the people that he stole from, or he would never know what it feels like until he feel it happen to him.
So what would you have him do? Is he going to be sweeping the streets or mowing the grass?
He's going to basically be their chauffeur or their maid, their Farnsworth Bentley. He would have to do whatever they do. He would have to basically kiss their feet. That'd be the only way he'll learn. I mean, jail wouldn't basically hurt nobody who lived in the woods for 27 years. Not my eyes. I mean,
right.
What's harder than that? Living in the woods, in the snow in Maine, it couldn't be no harder than that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have to admit, I have some admiration for him. I mean, I like the camp, I like the woods, things like that. I hiked for 4 or 5 days once in the rain and snow, and you know, I was so happy to get to McDonald's after that. So I do have some sneaking admiration for him. And you know, I just think it's so fascinating the fact he was alone. He just chose such a different lifestyle, kind of like an artwork. You know how just you see a piece of artwork and maybe you never would have created it, but it just fascinates you how someone would even think about that. So I'm kind of fascinated like him, almost like he's an exquisite piece of art. But he stole a lot.
That's the only thing that really messes him up. I mean, by him stealing. But yeah, if he didn't steal, he'd probably be dead. So
I'm inclined to say I could see giving him no jail time in return for long community service. And I agree. I think it needs to be something public. You know, I think people should be able to walk by and see him washing the...
Ask him questions. They need to talk to him. That's how they'll figure out what actually happened to him. Why did you leave home?
And he has the answer.
Yeah, this time you have to answer. Yeah, and to him maybe that's a type of punishment, but maybe that helps him adjust. Plus, you know, he's going to get a fantastic book offer or movie offer out of this.
He got marriage proposals.
Good point.
He got a lot of stuff already waiting on him.
Yeah, I mean,
so
wasn't certain people trying to bail him out of jail so they could interview him and stuff?
Tons of people wanted to bail him out of jail. Yeah, just so they could interview him. And you're right, one marriage proposal he even got. So you know, he could take some of that money, some of that clout, and he could turn it back and do something good for the community. I agree. I don't want to see him rot in jail. I don't see him like a Troy T. Knapp who did vicious things. Let's hope that the folks in Rome, Maine have the wisdom, I'm sure they do, to know what to do with Christopher Knight, the North Pond Hermit, a little bit like Finding Bigfoot. It was very interesting to understand a little bit more about him. Thank you for helping folks understand a little bit more about this interesting topic. And we'll be looking forward to having more interesting topics soon. These guests come from my English classes here at Parkland College. If you would like to make a question or comment, feel free to email Steve Rutledge, that's me, at srutledge@parkland.edu. We'll see you next time with another interesting issue on Interlocution.